Hi, I'm Sherry Drexler, and Lyme disease is an autoimmune disease caused by the bite of an infected tick. And Lyme disease has 4 stages: early localized Lyme disease, early disseminated Lyme disease, disseminated Lyme disease, and according to ILADS and IDSA, there are 2 different 4th stages. The IDSA believes in Lyme disease syndrome, and they believe that if you have Lyme disease syndrome, you have no active bacteria, you're as well as you're going to get, and the symptoms you have now are just what's left over, and you're not going to get any better at all. ILADS, on the other hand, believes in chronic Lyme disease, and they believe that during chronic Lyme disease there is still active bacteria. You still need long-term antibiotics, and you still have a chance of recovering further. This is a deer tick, and a deer tick is one of the ways that you can get Lyme disease if you were bitten by an infected deer tick that carries the bacteria Borrelia, which is the scientific name for Lyme disease. Then you can get Lyme disease. Lyme disease is also sexually transmitted, and you can get it a mother who is pregnant, and she can give it to the baby she's carrying. And if a mother doesn't know she has Lyme disease and she is nursing a baby, it can also be given to a baby through the mother's milk. So those are the ways that you can get Lyme disease. And I blew this tick up fairly large. I wanted you to see what color it was and exactly what it looked like in case you got a tick on you, so you knew what you were looking for. But the ticks are very small. Usually a deer tick is about the size of an eraser on a pencil. The main problem for people with Lyme disease is there are 3 sets of people who set guidelines for Lyme disease on how we should be treated. One is the International Lyme and Associated Diseases Society, or what we in the Lyme world call ILADS. ILADS is the people who train what we call Lyme literate MDs or LLMDs, and those are the doctors who are willing to give you antibiotics based on a Western blot test and you have symptoms of Lyme disease, or maybe even a negative test but you have all the symptoms of Lyme disease. The Infectious Disease Society of America, or the IDSA, they go only by tests. They want a positive EIA, which is an inaccurate test, and a Western blot test before they will treat you for Lyme disease. And the Center for Disease Control is also in there. And what's really difficult is the Center for Disease Control tries to shut down laboratories who do effective testing for Lyme, and they also have tried to pull the license and actually have physicians arrested who have treated people with long-term antibiotics because that's not what they think needs to be done. And actually that is what has helped a number of people with Lyme disease. Erik Erikson believes that every person goes through 8 stages of life unless they die young. Each stage of life has its own crisis which must be resolved, and each part of the crisis is an exact opposite of the other. For example, what we're going to be working with is stage 7, and the crisis there is generativity versus stagnation. And Erikson believes that it's important to get the crisis resolved in each stage because it might make it difficult for the person to face the crisis in the next stage of development. Generativity is what explains the middle-aged person's desire to do good. It's when a person cares about the next generation and wants to help them. They care about what they leave behind. Are we letting an earth that's full of trash, or are we letting an earth that has green spaces and parks and just things that make it nicer for the next generation? When you have generativity, it gives you a sense of identity, a sense of well-being, and I see it as a way of paying back. You know, people did wonderful things for me, and if I can do wonderful things for other people, then I paid it forward. And as I mentioned before, it does give people a sense of well-being, and it helps them to feel optimistic. The opposite of generativity is stagnation, and that's when a person does not care about others. He or she cares only about him or herself. This could be caused by illness, narcissism, trauma, or a number of other things. Stagnation leads to a poor sense of well-being. It gives you a negative attitude and a high sense of self-focus. People with Lyme disease, especially in the middle age, is at a high risk for stagnation. It's because we don't feel well. We don't have money for social activities. Friends have drifted away. Families don't understand the person's actions. And we just really don't have a way to help other people. We would like to, but we have cognitive issues, memory problems. Many of us aren't able to drive. Our processing speed is bad, and our emotions are very mixed up. And it's just not a good time to be able to help somebody else, even though it's what we'd like to do. If you wonder why people with Lyme disease are at risk, the biggest reason is the CDC. The CDC estimates that 300,000 people a year are diagnosed with Lyme disease. But that's about the only thing they get right about it. They do not have accurate testing. They do not have effective treatment. And they refuse to listen to people from iLabs or research done by other places that shows Lyme disease does act this way. You don't have to have a rash to have Lyme disease, that you need long-term antibiotics to get well. They just don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. And on top of that, they are trying to shut down labs that do have the more accurate testing, and doctors that try to help people and give us the long-term antibiotics so that we can get better. CDC would like to see that all gone, and that's one of the big risks for people with middle age with Lyme disease. The controversies between the IDSA/CDC and ILAD are a big part of what puts people with Lyme disease at risk. As I mentioned before, they can't agree on a way to diagnosis. IDSA says an EIA test is good, and if it's positive, then do a Western blot test. ILAD says the EIA test is inaccurate, and a Western blot test should be done, and you should look at the patient's symptoms. For treatment, IDSA says if you're in stage 1, you need 14 days of antibiotics, and you're better. ILAD says if you're in stage 1, you need 28 days of oral antibiotics. If you're in stage 2, IDSA says 14 days of oral antibiotics again. If you're in stage 2, ILAD says you need oral therapy until there is no active disease for 5 to 8 weeks. That means treatment normally lasts for 4 to 6 months. If you're in stage 3, IDSA and CDC suggest 21 days of oral antibiotics unless you have a cardiac issue. Then they're going to give you some IV antibiotics. If you're in stage 3 under ILADS, you get IV therapy for 14 weeks or more, and then oral therapy until there's no active disease for 4 to 8 weeks. If you hit stage 4 with IDSA, they're going to say, you better start testing and see if the patient has something else, because this must not really be Lyme disease. Under ILADS, they're going to give high-dose IV therapy, they're going to do pulse therapy, and they're going to check for co-infections and see if there's something else there that you get from a tick that needs treated as well to help you get better from Lyme. So you can see there are a lot of reasons that we're at risk. Being misdiagnosed many times is a big risk for people with Lyme disease, and it happens sometimes for years. I went 10 years before I was finally diagnosed with Lyme disease. You get told that you're depressed, you're having a panic attack, any number of things. But doctors do not look for Lyme disease unless they see the bullseye rash, and the longer that you are left misdiagnosed, the harder you are to treat, and the more possibilities that you get some of the really nasty things to make it so that you can't do things to live out generativity, that you're going to be stuck in stagnation. Now, some people may think that once you find out you have Lyme disease and you find a Lyme literate doctor, that your risk goes down, but it actually doesn't. If you want to go to a Lyme literate doctor, those office visits usually cost between $400 and $3,000 a visit, and insurance will not pay for them. You may find that insurance won't pay for your antibiotics or your other medications because they feel that you should only be on them for a certain length of time, and that is not the length of time that the ILADS or the Lyme literate doctor believes you should be on them. You're also going to find out that with Lyme disease, when you start taking your medication, you're going to feel worse, possibly a lot worse than you did before you took medication. And you also find out that you need to be on a special diet. It's pretty hard to follow, but if you don't follow it, you feel very bad. And you're going to need a lot of supplements to take. That's going to cost money that you probably don't have since you're unable to work. And there's just a lot of things that put you at high risk when you have Lyme disease and when you're middle-aged, that you're going to end up in stagnation. We're going to go to the stages of development again real quickly. Just, the stages of development start at birth and end with death. And the 7th stage is called middle adulthood. That's when you're 40 to 65 years old, and the crisis is generativity versus stagnation. The first stage is infancy, 0 to 2 years, and that's trust versus mistrust. In this stage, a baby's going to learn, is his mom, his dad, his caregiver. When I need something, are they going to come? I can trust them. They're going to take care of me. They're going to give me what I need. Or they're going to learn that when they need help and they needed something, nobody came. And they're going to learn to mistrust people rather than trust them. The next stage is early childhood, which is 2 to 3 years old. Autonomy versus shame doubt is the crisis. And this is when children want to become self-sufficient in feeding themselves, toileting, walking, things like that. And if they become good at it, they reach autonomy. If not, they doubt their abilities and they feel shame and doubt. The next stage is preschool, which is 3 to 5 years old, and that crisis is initiation versus guilt. This is when kids want to take on some adult activities. They may say, can they help you mow the grass? Can they help you cook? They like, little girls and little boys like to follow their mom around and help clean. They just want to do adult activities. And if they get to do this and they've accomplished it and they feel good about it, then they're going to feel adventurous and not be afraid to try new things. But if something happens that they weren't able to do these activities, or they couldn't do them well, or somebody told them they can't do it right, then they're going to feel guilty. At school-age children, 6 to 11 years, the crisis is industry versus inferiority. This is when kids learn to be busy and competent at new skills. They want to learn how to do new things, and they want to do them well. And if they do well, they're going to be industrious. However, if they can't complete the skill for some reason, or they're just not very good at it, they're going to feel inferior. The next stage is adolescence, which is 12 to 18 years old, and any mother, father, anybody with kids can tell you that identity versus role confusion is definitely the crisis that people this age reach. This is when teens are trying to figure out who they are, what they believe. Do they believe like their parents did about religion, about sex, about school? They decide who they are, what their identity is going to be, and what role they're going to play in life. If they can't decide who they want to be, then they're going to have role confusion rather than an identity. The next stage is young adulthood, which is 19 to 40 years old, and that crisis is intimacy versus isolation. This is the stage where young adults are looking for companionship and love, and they want to be with somebody. But some young adults isolate themselves. They don't want to be disappointed. They don't want to be rejected. So they end up in isolation rather than in an intimate relationship. Now we've reached middle adulthood, which you've heard before, and that is ages 40 to 65 years old. And no, I won't tell you where I am in that age range. That stage is called generativity versus stagnation. And as I mentioned, it is the stage where middle-aged people want to contribute to the next generation. We want to do meaningful work. We want to raise children. We want to volunteer and, do it with a charity. Just something that makes a difference to people that's going to be left after we've died. We want people to remember us for something good that we did while we were alive. And the final stage is maturity, which is ages 65 to death. And the crisis, ego identity versus despair. And this is when older adults look back on their life and say, was my life worth living? When I die, is anybody even going to care? Is it going to matter to anybody? Did I live a meaningful life? Did I meet goals? Or, do I feel despair because I haven't met any goals and I didn't do anything worthwhile? I wasted the life that I had, and there's nothing I can do about it at this point. These are the faces of Lyme disease, and my face is in all 4 of these pictures. In the picture with the dog, This is how I look most of the time. My hair isn't fixed. I'm sitting on my couch in a robe with a blanket covering me and my dog's laying beside me because I don't feel well enough to do anything else. I get up and do my schoolwork, but there's many days I don't do anything else. And that's just because that's how bad we feel. Now, I would like to be able to do the things you see in the other pictures. In one picture, I'm there with my best friend, and we were out. It was actually my birthday party, having a wonderful time. In another picture, I'm with my family at Christmas, and the other last picture, we're watching a Steelers game and having a good time. But those are the things we want to do. I want to have generativity. I want to teach my grandson what's important in life. I want to remind my kids what's important in life. I want to have fun with my best friends. I want to volunteer with my grandson and my kids and my friends and just really make a difference. But that's something Lyme disease does not allow me to do. I'm going to tell you what the symptoms of Lyme disease are so that you have some idea of why we can't do the things that we'd like to do and why we do become stagnant. In early localized Lyme disease, we just get flu-like symptoms, swollen lymph nodes. You might get that EM, as it's called, but it's the bullseye rash. And the rash isn't always present, or it could be somewhere that it's not noted by the patient. You just might not see it. In early disseminated Lyme disease, things get worse. If you miss it during the first stage, people in this stage may develop Bell's palsy, and that's when your face looks like you've had a stroke. I did develop Bell's palsy with mine, and my eye wouldn't close, and my mouth drooped down, and for a long time I had to drink with a straw because if I drank just with my mouth, water just ran out. Whatever I drank just ran out the right side of my face. But thankfully, thank God, my Bell's palsy has cleared up quite a bit. I notice it when I smell. Other people say they don't, but that is a symptom of disseminated Lyme disease. But you could also get meningitis and joint inflammation, and you can have cardiac irregularities. Late disseminated Lyme disease is when Lyme disease was missed during the first 2 stages. And if you hit this stage, you're going to have severe joint pain. Your joints are going to swell. There's going to be neurologic complaints. You're going to have short-term memory loss, cognitive issues. You're going to have shooting pains different places, numbing and tinglings in your hands and feet. And you're just going to feel very bad. And finally, in Lyme disease syndrome, as the IDSA calls it, but really in chronic Lyme disease, when it's left untreated, you didn't know you had Lyme disease during all those other stages. You were told, for years, there's nothing wrong with you. You were misdiagnosed. And this can cause long-term symptoms. You can have seizures. Some people aren't able to walk. Many people have speech problems. Many people have long-term memory problems. You have trouble processing information, and some people even die. I can tell you that I myself had speech problems for about 8 months. I spoke like a person who had a stroke, but thankfully, thank God, that did get better for me. Many of the reasons listed here put anybody that has Lyme disease at risk, but some of them put middle-aged adults more at risk than other people. But we're at risk because we're misdiagnosed. We cannot find a doctor to treat Lyme disease. Insurance will not pay for treatment or many of the medications. SSI doesn't consider having Lyme disease a reason not to work. But you can't work when you have Lyme disease. You lose social contact. You lose friends. No one understands. It's just a very difficult disease to understand if it's not you who has it. Special diets are required. You might forget to take your medications, or you might over-medicate because you forgot you already took them. Feeling there's no purpose in life is a big risk for people in middle age. You just feel like you have no reason to live. You can't work. You can't help others. You usually can't do your housework. You can't enjoy things with your family. It just gives you a feeling of being absolutely worthless, which leads to the feeling of suicide. And suicide is a big risk with people with Lyme disease, and especially people who are middle-aged. I can tell you that I myself have considered it many, many times, and the only thing that stopped me from doing it is the fact that I'm a Christian. I love my husband, my kids, and my grandson. If we look at how a social worker can help a person with Lyme disease, we first want to look at what they should look for during the assessment. And that's, does the client have cognitive issues? Can the client give you the answers you need during the assessment so that you know what they really need? Does the client have a support system? Does the client have a physician? Will insurance cover physicians' appointments and tests? And if not, is the client skipping appointments and tests because they have no way to pay for it? Can the client cook and clean for him or herself? And if not, who's doing it? Does the client have transportation to appointments, groceries, shopping, those types of things? Has a client become reclusive? They just want to stay at home. They want left alone. Is the client depressed? And if they are depressed as a symptom of Lyme disease, or are they depressed because they have Lyme disease? There is a difference, and it's important that people know what that is. Is suicide an issue? Can visits be arranged? Can somebody go over to talk, play cards with, play other games with? Is there anything that the client can do that will give him or her a purpose in life so that they feel they're useful and suicide doesn't become an issue because they feel like they have a person? And another way that a social worker can help is to be an advocate for the client. I can personally see where it would be very easy for a middle-aged person with Lyme disease to fall into stagnation rather than to grow into generativity. But I live with this disease every day of my life. I know what it's like. I do know that a social worker, a friend, somebody needs to help give that person with Lyme disease, especially a middle-aged person, a reason to feel that he or she is doing something for the next generation, that they have a purpose in life. And the most important thing of all that a social worker needs to do for a person with Lyme disease is advocate. Advocate with the local government, advocate with the state government, with the federal government. Make sure that they realize people with Lyme disease need help, and we need long-term medication, and we need to not have to travel 2 hours to get our doctors. So thank you for listening to this presentation. I appreciate it. Have a great day.